In 2018, the federal government indicted the legendary newspapermen Michael Lacey and James Larkin.
The founders of Backpage.com have their day in court starting today, facing 51 counts related to facilitating prostitution as well as money laundering.
This has taken on absurd dimensions.
We're not guilty.
We're not guilty. You can't talk me into it.
Good businesses such as Craigslist shut that aspect of their business model down. Backpage needs to do the same.
It's like a bar fight, and you just can't see where the next idiot is going to come from. You just know that they're coming.
It kicked off a complicated legal battle over free speech.
Shame on you for hiding behind the First Amendment.
Backpage had been increasingly successful in its First Amendment litigation, and the political pressure to do something, anything, to make Backpage go away.
And when I look up, there's a guy pointing a gun at me. I walk over and open the door and try to be as peaceable as I am capable of being when I'm scared shitless.
Seizing its assets, seizing bank accounts, and making it impossible for Backpage to pay its lawyers.
It created a political playbook to justify online censorship.
This is not an attempt to deal with the real problems. This is an attempt to demonize someone. They can pretend they're doing something.
We are really headed in the direction of more coercive control.
Well, we're going to be sentenced. And in fact, I could be incarcerated today.
Coming up, the war on Backpage.com and what it means for the future of free speech on the internet.
Founders of Backpage.com.
Police and prosecutors say that Backpage contributed to sex trafficking of women and children.
In total, the defendants are charged with almost 100 counts.
Backpage.com needs to shut itself down.
Deal with facilitating prostitution, while another several deal with money laundering.
I'm Elizabeth Nolan Brown.
And seized the website.
And for the past decade, I've been covering the government's crusade against web classified ads.
I don't think sex trafficking kids falls under free speech.
And against Michael Lacey and James Larkin.
We're not responsible for what goes on. We're just the platform.
The founders of Backpage.com.
It's the same thing as posting an ad within the New Times or the Arizona Republic.
In a few months, Michael Lacey will find out if he's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Today, I'm at his house outside Phoenix. It feels like a maze. Michael! I can't imagine what the FBI thought when they raided this place.
That's his office. Door's open, but I don't see anyone in there.
The house was seized by the FBI, so he can't sell it to pay his legal bills. The government is letting him continue to live here for now as he awaits sentencing on a single count of international concealment money laundering. A conviction Lacey says has no basis and plans to appeal.
Hi.
I paid a lot of money to get this house built back when I had money, and no one can find the front door. I delight in telling the architect this. Hey guys, come on in.
So I was out here last time. We interviewed in Jim's kitchen because I was picturing that being your house, but no, that was mostly
that was
Jim's house that we were at. Yeah.
You know, this is this has taken on absurd dimensions. What's going on here?
In 2017, Lacey and Larkin were called to answer questions before Congress.
Your company exploits children.
That is predatory in nature.
Devastating exploitation and crime.
We do not need people who enable pimps to buy and sell our children.
Do you acknowledge today, for the record, that child sex trafficking is a serious problem on Backpage?
The narrative had been pushed for years by politicians on the left and right, but Lacey and Larkin refused to play along.
It's like a bar fight, you know, and you just can't see where the next idiot is going to come from. You just know that they're coming.
For a while, free speech laws helped them win every courtroom battle.
Shame on you for hiding behind the First Amendment.
The website had argued it was immune from sex trafficking lawsuits under the Communications Decency Act.
Can you imagine?
Praise Jesus.
This is how I picture Lacey and Larkin, side by side and always making each other laugh, no matter how dire the circumstances.
Well, good job. Thanks for being patient with us.
Appreciate you taking
Their friendship and working relationship started over 50 years ago, building an alt-weekly newspaper empire in the desert.
New Times was focused on the reader, wasn't focused on the power structure, wasn't pandering to anyone, but basically was pandering to the readership in terms of interesting stories, attitudes that were not right-wing and not left-wing, but kind of unusually anachronistic.
Lacey handled the editorial, and Larkin handled the business.
We were funded with classified and display ads. The papers were always free. Adult ads with stripper ads, all kinds of ads in the back of the book, personal ads, which really became an attraction to the reader for the paper. Totally legal, always have been legal.
The pair fought in court on behalf of the newspaper again and again, defending their First Amendment right to distribute, run articles, and run ads as they saw fit. New Times was even convicted for running an abortion services ad and fought it all the way to Arizona's Court of Appeals, which ruled in their favor and struck down the state's law against abortion and birth control advertising. Lacey and Larkin took on powerful figures like Arizona Senator John McCain.
Everything to this guy was communist. Do you remember that?
Right, I do.
New Times exposed Cindy McCain's theft of opioid pills from a medical aid organization she ran. And it went after John McCain for his involvement in a 1987 savings and loan scandal involving Charles Keating.
We had an immediate issue with McCain, personally.
New Times was so successful that it bought up failing alt-weeklies across the country and turned them around. Denver, then Miami, Dallas, and more.
We stayed away from the establishment in every market that we were in. We didn't interface with them at all because we felt that, again, our contract was with the reader and the stories that we published. And that pisses people off if you won't play the game.
Then, along came the internet.
The paper has lost a significant source of income, classified ads, to the website Craigslist.
And it just wound up growing, in a way, out of control.
Many small-town newspapers see themselves as victims in the battle over classified ad dollars.
It had the same kind of classified mix that our newspapers had. Homes, rentals, personals, adult. And we decided we'd better do something about it. So in 2004, we launched Backpage.com, which was the descendant of our Backpage of our newspapers. All of our newspapers had a Backpage that was called Backpage.
The Village Voice, king of alt newspapers, was headed for financial collapse, so New Times bought it.
Today, two giants of the alternative press, if that's not an oxymoron, announced that they will merge. Village Voice Media and New Times Media.
He hopes the new company can compete more successfully with Craigslist through an online classified project called Backpage.com.
The Village Voice had been exposing misdeeds of the powerful since the 1950s, mixing opinion with original reporting. Lacey and Larkin had emulated that approach at the New Times, with perhaps even more irreverence. A sensibility on ample display at Phoenix New Times office parties.
Our hallway is filled with life-size cardboard cutouts of all the important people in Phoenix, okay? Because none of them were going to actually be there at the party, okay? We had all these mannequins, you remember that? Okay, all these mannequins of Charles Keating and John McCain and
stand-up cutouts.
About that, so you guys are very cheerful in all of this. Is that just how you are? Is this sort of how you have to deal with this?
What's the point of being anything else at this juncture?
It's hard to make us feel guilty.
Okay? We're not guilty.
We're not guilty. Okay, you can't talk me into it. Irish people are known for two things. When I went to Ireland, the top-selling poster wasn't of U2. It's of 12 Irish writers. We come out of that tradition. We're Irish writers. And the other thing that the Irish are known for is sort of a pugnacious attitude, not easily housebroken. I'll be crying next month.
Lacey's longtime partner, Jim Larkin, killed himself at age 74, a week before the trial was scheduled to begin. The verdicts will definitely go to appeal. There were several oddities about the trial and the judge.
Did you have any idea that Jim was feeling so down?
No, you know, we had been through so much, and we always went through it together. I never saw that side of Jim. He asked me once if I had any sleeping pills, but he didn't say, can I get a fistful? Okay, he was like trying to sleep that night. So no, I didn't know, and it was why it was, I mean, I literally screamed when I heard about it on the phone. That's how I learned about it. One of my lawyers called me. But the truth is he's gone. And he shouldn't be. He just shouldn't be. I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened in a business that not just one, but every single lawyer that looked at the business said this is legal, okay? And because we made enemies politically, all that got overlooked.
Lacey and Larkin's former political adversaries insinuated that Backpage had committed crimes.
The two owners of Backpage live in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm ashamed to say. They're selling children online. They're selling little girls, little boys online.
Backpage has been linked to hundreds of human trafficking cases, including those of children.
I think all of us here today and those interested in this issue have a continuing obligation to shame them into doing the right thing.
I will repeat what I've said many times. Backpage.com needs to shut itself down when it has created as its business model the profiting off the selling of human beings and the purchase of human beings.
Our Bay Area weather for tonight will find fog and cloudy skies.
Flight delays at SFO of up to 38 minutes for arriving flights. I'm Mel Baker for KQED.
That's when journalist Mike Masnick got interested in the story.
So here's the very small office. Right out here there's Highway 101. It's the main thoroughfare through Silicon Valley.
As the creator of TechDirt, Masnick spent his career punching up at tech companies and politicians while covering topics like tech policy, the First Amendment, and content moderation.
There's this weird belief that the best way to deal with bad speech is like just to make the company stop it from happening at all. And it's just this idea that like silencing speech somehow makes the underlying problems go away. And that's rarely true, if ever.
Masnick has followed the rise and fall of many websites since he started his publication 27 years ago. I asked him to take us back to 2008, when Craigslist got pushback over its adult ads.
So the adult ads were free to start with.
Right, everything except for the job ads were free, and that included the adult ads.
Unless Craigslist created the ads, it wasn't liable for them, thanks to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Known as the Internet's First Amendment, Section 230 protects online operators from being punished for user speech. Attorneys general knew they didn't have any power legally, so they tried to bully Craigslist into changing its policies.
So-called erotic services on Craigslist have been a problem for a long time.
Now law enforcement from around the country and here in the metro are trying to put an end to it.
As they always do, they like sent a public letter and have a press conference about how evil Craigslist is. And so there was some sort of negotiation that went back and forth, and the agreement that was reached was that to deal with that, Craigslist would start charging.
This was an idea pushed by state attorneys general. They figured if people had to enter credit card info to post adult ads, there would be a digital trail that law enforcement could follow.
Another group of attorneys general, probably mostly the same, put out another giant press release and said, Craigslist is profiting off of adult ads. It's like the only reason they're doing that is because you forced them to in the first place.
Craigslist has to be held accountable. It's making tens of millions of dollars from these kinds of ads, which is outrageous.
Sex trafficking is usually the way it was framed, even when it was consensual sex work as opposed to actual sex trafficking. And it was this bizarre thing, and then finally Craigslist was like, forget it.
It's done the right thing voluntarily by shutting down the adult services section.
And placed a black censored label over where the link used to be.
And then the same AGs are suddenly complaining about Backpage, and it's like, oh, okay, that's where everybody went after Craigslist shut down.
But Backpage wouldn't give in and censor adult ads as Craigslist had. So attorneys general started promoting the myth that Backpage was actively allowing ads for sex trafficking.
Did you, from what you learned about Backpage and through court documents and through the hearings and the trials, anything you've learned, do you think that they were doing an especially bad job at content moderation?
Not that I saw, right? And again, I didn't have a clear view into what they were doing, but based on the reporting and the details and everything that's come out in the court documents, it appeared that they took the role of having to do content moderation seriously.
The federal government never charged Backpage with sex trafficking, and the site only allowed ads placed by legal adults. When police did discover posts involving minors among the massive trove of ads posted daily, Backpage worked with them to bring perpetrators to justice. That was true in the case of Erica Brewster, who testified against Backpage's former CEO in a Texas court. She had appeared in an ad claiming she was 20 when she was in fact just 15. Backpage wasn't aware that her advertised age was fake. And when the site was approached by law enforcement, it supplied information that helped lead to the arrest and conviction of Brewster's pimp, Jovan Miles, who was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Brewster's case shows that Backpage's moderation system sometimes failed. But executives took the process seriously and worked to improve it over time, according to confidential DOJ memos from 2012 and 2013 that I obtained in my reporting.
Backpage is remarkably responsive to law enforcement requests. Often takes proactive steps to assist in investigations. Backpage genuinely wanted to get child prostitution off its site.
They wouldn't let that be admissible in court.
Right, yeah. Not only not admissible, but ordered physically destroyed. I've never heard of that. We also ended up with relationships with police departments. Now, this is not something I was involved in, not something I did, but I've got a binder of letters and emails from law enforcement all over the country, and the binder's that thick. And it was referred to colloquially as the attaboys.
The person overseeing this collaboration and testifying in court against alleged sex traffickers on behalf of prosecutors was Carl Ferrer, Backpage CEO.
Carl got a certificate from Robert Mueller, the head of the FBI, thanking him for all of his cooperation.
When state attorneys general like Richard Blumenthal and Kamala Harris started publicly denouncing Backpage and its business practices, the site's relationship with federal law enforcement took a dramatic turn.
I was sitting here working on something, and I can see out of the corner of my eye movement over there. And when I look up, there's a guy pointing a gun at me. I walk over and open the door and try to be as peaceable as I am capable of being when I'm scared shitless. Hooks me up, and I'm standing here, and he wants to know, is there anybody else on the property? And I said, yes, my mother-in-law is here, and her sister. I said, they're elderly ladies. Why don't we walk down there together, and I will bring them out so there's no additional drama. The son of a bitch says, how they're treated will depend entirely on how they respond. I look down, and I see a guy barge in through the bedroom, the guest bedroom down here, and that's when they put a gun on my mother-in-law in the shower. I can hear it from here. He screams at her, when an FBI agent tells you to do something, you do it. And this is where she asks for a towel. They are then marched out of this room and made to sit down in the chairs that are outside. And I am marched past them, handcuffed, with a gun on me, out to the patrol car. The house is stripped, and there's just all of these sort of nails and things that you hang wire off of to hang a picture all over the house. There's an entire house of all of this. When I got out of prison, I was in prison for 8 days. I come back and I'm working on a story, and I'm in my office, and I reach for an accordion file. And in the accordion file, I find this, okay? This is something the FBI left behind for me to find later, to remind me of who I've been fucking with. I have never run, I've never fled, I've never avoided a court appearance. I do all the, I wore an ankle monitor for several years. I still do a urine analysis, okay? I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to win this thing on my feet in a fucking courtroom, okay? I've never run from anything in my entire life. It's insulting to even think about.
Good afternoon and welcome to the spring meeting of the National Association of Attorneys General. It's my pleasure to welcome all of my fellow AGs.
Attorneys General kept pushing the narrative that Backpage was doing nothing.
A lot of your alternative newspapers in some of your communities are owned by the same company that owns Backpage, and thus far they've been very uncooperative with us.
Backpage and other people like that, they've been very uncooperative with me in Michigan. And because we've sent a letter demanding that Backpage take down some of their sex pages, I would recommend that none of us enter into agreements with Backpage to put our state agency pages up on there.
Then Attorney General of California Kamala Harris charged Lacey, Larkin, and Ferrer with pimping charges in the state. Twice.
Good businesses such as Craigslist understood how it could be abused and mishandled, and they shut that aspect of their business model down. Backpage needs to do the same.
Harris got her name in the news right before an election, saying she had taken down the people behind Backpage. But ultimately, the pimping charges would be thrown out of court on the grounds that Lacey and Larkin weren't responsible for what others were doing on their platform without their permission.
I mean, it's obviously a winning political strategy to say you're going to be cleaning up smut or preventing vice. Protecting children is always a very popular theme for politicians. Catnip, I think, for state attorneys general.
That's Robert Korn Revere, an attorney who spent his career defending free speech for everyone. Individuals to nonprofits like Human Rights Watch and the Internet Archive to companies like CBS and Playboy. He was once chief counsel to the Federal Communications Commission chair and even successfully got a pardon in New York for the late comedian Lenny Bruce, who was convicted of delivering obscene comedy routines. He also represented Backpage.com. We've talked for years about ads like the 51 in question in this case.
You can't tell from looking at an ad on a site like that whether or not it is for, in fact, an escort service, which is legal in most states, I think licensed in a majority of states, or someone who posts the ads but intends to engage in an illegal activity, which is illegal in most jurisdictions, and that is prostitution. Nor can you tell from the face of those ads that it would have anything to do with trafficking. The owners of Backpage were very much in favor of working with law enforcement at all levels, including the federal government, to try and provide evidence whenever there was any awareness of sex trafficking, and that is anyone being compelled to engage in prostitution or sexual services against their will or underage. They would provide testimony to prosecute those involved and would go around the country to do that on the company's dime, which ultimately, as a legal matter, was why there was no basis for prosecution. At least that was concluded at the time. What changed between then and when the prosecution happened in 2018 is that Backpage had been increasingly successful in its First Amendment litigation, and the political pressure to do something, anything, to make Backpage go away increased during that time. These are guys who did not back down from a fight. And so when the political pressure to do something about Backpage increased, their impulse was to fight back.
Backpage.com is the market leader in commercial sex advertising.
But I really think we're going to get Backpage this year. I really do.
Your company exploits children.
an online slave market that actively sells America's innocent women and children for sex.
The site had been seized by the FBI and the DOJ.
We saw federal agents raid the Paradise Valley homes of Backpage co-founders James Larkin and Michael Lacey.
The court date would take years to get to, in part because of a pandemic, and in part because prosecutors kept throwing up roadblocks.
Prosecutors were intent on making this sound like a trafficking case when it wasn't a trafficking case, and have continued to try and limit the defenses the defendants can use in this case. For example, talking about the First Amendment and making reference to their previous First Amendment victories in cases that had come before this prosecution.
The founders of Backpage.com have their day in court starting today, facing 51 counts related to facilitating prostitution as well as money laundering.
The trial didn't go as planned.
A mistrial was just declared in the Backpage trial.
The judge declared that prosecutors and one of their star witnesses tainted the jury by focusing on child sex trafficking, and that is not what the executives are charged with. Michael Lacey and James Larkin and a handful of other Backpage executives are charged with...
Lacey's business partner, Jim Larkin, died by suicide.
The judge is going to ask, you've heard that the man died, you've heard how he died maybe, can you still judge this case fairly?
By the time of Larkin's suicide, Corn Revere was no longer representing him and Michael Lacey, but he's haunted by what happened.
One of the tactics that the government employed was trying to starve Backpage out by seizing its assets, seizing bank accounts, and making it impossible for Backpage to pay its lawyers. Ultimately, that led to my firm's bowing out from representation of the former owners of Backpage.com. I think the government has Jim Larkin's blood on its hands for both the prosecution and the tactics that it's used in this prosecution. It was something that I haven't experienced before, where I've lost a client to simply the pressures making it too much for him to go on living. It was my job to try and protect him legally, and ultimately couldn't do that. And so that's a weight that I continue to bear.
So stick around. It's member-supported KCRW, Santa Monica, Los Angeles. KDRW
now,
in Santa
a bill
Monica.
combating online sex trafficking will soon be law.
FOSTA amends Section 230 to allow for stronger criminal enforcement against websites, and SESTA amends Section 230 to allow for stronger civil enforcement against websites that profit from human trafficking.
Done enough open mics to know that this is a big deal. You guys turned out. That's cool. Thank you guys for coming through an alley to see me perform. That's my favorite thing. I'm going to be covering 10,000 years of history from a sex worker's perspective. First thing that happened is that a boy monkey gave a girl monkey a token, and then they had sex.
Caitlin Bailey is a sex worker advocate and a former sex worker herself. She says that when the industry moved online, it became profoundly safer.
Back in 2004, I was able to post an ad online. I received dozens of emails, so I could see whether or not somebody was adhering to my screening protocol. I could do a vibe check before meeting. It was perfectly acceptable for me to call a friend in front of him and read his name aloud and tell her where I was and what time to expect to hear from me. So it was no mystery. He knew that someone knew where I was, who I was with, and what time to expect to hear from me.
She and I have spoken about the moral panic about sex work and sex trafficking that's taken over in recent decades. It puts sex workers behind bars, and in the wake of SESTA FOSTA and the seizure of Backpage, it drastically changed the online world. for sex workers and everyone else.
You saw a huge influx of inappropriate solicitations on dating websites, huge uptick in street-based prostitution, asking for money at bars. This is not the way that sex workers want to do business. We want to be able to openly advertise our services and explicitly negotiate consent with a willing customer. We don't want to colonize your dating sites. We're there under duress. You know, platforms are really scrambling with obscure and vague information in the wake of like what feels like a moral sex panic. And so, you know, small c conservative organizations, platforms that have a lot to lose are erring on the side of banning people and censoring content and information. It's the safest, more conservative policy. I'm a gets high and reads the internet person. Yeah. It's going great for me. Yeah. Exchanging sex for something of value predates us as a species. But people who make other people come, even for money, even on the internet, are not the thing tearing society apart. Not during the time of Hammurabi, not during the time of Jesus, and not right now. I have a lot of faith in sex workers as innovators. We have been at the forefront of every major technological, communication, financial, cultural innovation for all of human history. And also, I feel like my generation might be the last generation to have access to the free internet. I think that we are really headed in the direction of more censorship, more coercive control. And I think it's so important in a free society for people to be able to post controversial information on the internet, information or images that make other people upset, whether that's explicit content or political content. I don't think that, you know, any government or powerful organization holds back on their ability to control the conversation.
We've got a problem in this country.
Backpage is selling our children into sex slavery, and we must hold them accountable.
These hearings have made clear we care.
The year after Larkin's suicide, as Lacey waited to find out his sentence, the heads of Discord, Snapchat, TikTok, X, and Meta were called before Congress to face accusations that they were facilitating child sex trafficking and other horrors on their platforms.
Senator, our tools for identifying that kind of content are industry leading. That doesn't mean we're perfect. There are definitely issues that we have, but we continue to invest a ton in it.
Yes, there are a lot that is slipping through. It appears that you're trying to be the premier sex trafficking site.
Of course not, Senator.
Social media platforms are being used to facilitate this trafficking.
Predatory behavior that these technologies have enabled.
Instagram is restricting access to sexually explicit content, but only for teens ages 13 to 15. Why not restrict it for 16 and 17-year-olds as well?
Did you and everyone else at Snap really fail to see that the platform was the perfect tool for sexual predators?
Politicians pushed a host of bills meant to protect children.
My Stop CSAM Act.
My bill with Senator Cornyn, the SHIELD Act.
The Earn It Act, the Report Act, the Project Safe Childhood Act.
These bills are premised in part on the idea that sex trafficking has skyrocketed.
In 2013, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received approximately 1,380 cyber tips per day. By 2023, just 10 years later, the number of cyber tips has risen to 100,000 reports a day.
These numbers are misleading. All of the major tech companies report abuse to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's cyber tip line, just as Backpage once did. But in recent years, lawmakers have created incentives to over-report, and tech company reports often include inaccurate data or memes, according to a 2024 study from Stanford's Internet Observatory.
It's the same playbook. How do we actually deal with the underlying problem? Let's just put a law on it. This is not an attempt to deal with the real problems. This is an attempt to demonize someone and some company because it gets headlines, it gets attention. They can pretend they're doing something when they're really making the problem worse. It was easy for them to do it with Larkin and Lacey. it would be easy for them to do it to Zuckerberg or whoever else they want to go after.
I'm having the lawyers inquire as to whether or not I can bring a library with me to prison. Yeah, well, I miss that. Yeah, I'll miss all of it because there's very little about this home that's accidental. Okay, it's purposeful. But I will come back to it. I will get out of prison at some point. You know?
Lacey has been compiling some of his writing for a book. In the process, he's been reflecting on his legacy.
Journalism is the only profession that rivals Hollywood for handing out awards. We apparently have applied to all of them. I still catch myself before I've had coffee saying, oh, I got to send this to Jim. Okay, I'll see something and it's like, oh, fuck. No sending anything to Jim. So I see him all the time in this stuff. I mean, we really were a partnership. He told me beforehand, and it was only like looking back that I realized what was going on. He said, look, you're going to be all right in this. You didn't have anything to do with Backpage. He said, but my name is all over every single document having to do with Backpage. And I think Jim they destroyed him. He ran out of hope, you know, and had been told repeatedly by every lawyer, not just most lawyers, but by every lawyer that looked at Backpage that it was legal, okay? And here he was facing a really harsh road in prison. And I think he just ran out of hope.
Do you think why he went to the place he did to do it because of the connection? Because he was felt very powerfully connected to this landscape, didn't he?
Jim was a native Phoenician, okay? And I'd never met anybody that wasn't already working at the botanical gardens who loved the desert more than Jim. So many people feel like it's an alien landscape, okay? But it's really more like an aquarium that's been drained, okay? And you have all of this marvelous growth, these plants that are so hardy and so resilient and so beautiful in their own right. If you just give them a chance, they will make your life better.
We have some breaking news as President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. This happening
Joe Biden
just
is saying
moments
that he
ago.
supports Vice President Kamala Harris as his replacement. Not a surprise, I suppose.
As California's Attorney General, she fought Backpage.com. She filed criminal charges. No one has ever done that.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Michael Lacey, a former big shot publisher right here in the Valley.
We convicted him of a single count of international concealment money laundering, but deadlocked on.
How you doing? Okay. All right, let me go find them, and we'll see you in a few minutes, I guess. Well, we're going to be sentenced, and in fact, I could be incarcerated today. This entire proceeding is shadowed with the sadness of Jim Larkin's passing away. You know, everything that's going on here takes a back seat to losing my friend and partner of over 50 years. The money laundering account, which I was found guilty on, involved moving a bank account to Europe. My attorneys reported every year where the money was and how much money there was. There was no concealment. Money was moved because FBI agents went around to the American banks that I had a relationship with and told them that they shouldn't be doing business with me.
My partner Jim Larkin used to say that the tall nail gets hammered. I think I'm going to get it hammered. Are they going to let you into the lobby?
They're not going to let me pass right about here, so.
Okay.
Because I'll drop this off
David.
and I'll come up though.
Good shot of that.
Founder of classified ad site Backpage.com was sentenced Wednesday by a federal judge in Phoenix. Michael Lacey now faces 5 years in prison and a $3 million fine.
Attorneys for Lacey, who co-founded the Phoenix New-Times before launching Backpage, argued he wasn't involved with the site's day-to-day operations. U.S. District Judge Diana Humitua said Lacey was still aware of the allegations, but chose to do nothing. Nick Carmia, KJZZ News.
Michael Lacey and James Larkin won't be the last publishers persecuted for speech that the government considers undesirable. The Backpage saga shows the limits of free speech protections when agents of the state are determined to set an example. The government will always have more money, more time, more allies, and more influence.
We've always run a very, very legal operation in every respect. That's kind of the way we've approached the business. They know that the First Amendment is what we stand for, what we've always stood behind. It's a very difficult situation, and that's the way they want it. They have all the power in the world.